G'day fellas. In this video, we're going to be looking at one of the most overpowered strategies ever covered on this channel. And the reason why it's overpowered is because there are a lot of civilizations that really can't do anything against this rush. So the player who's popularized this build order goes by the name Lilbao SC. He's an ex-StarCraft 2 pro and he's now playing Age of Empires 3 quite competitively. He's reached the top 10 and he almost always uses this build order. Now just before we do get into it, I'm currently live over on Twitch, so come say g'day after you watch the video. Let's get to it.
This is 10% bugs, 20% chill, 15% claiming your opponent ain't skilled, 5% treasure, 50% blame, and 100% reason to remember the lane.
While there have been variants of this strategy that have existed for at least a couple of years, this is the first time that I've seen something that's just so absolutely insane and incredibly difficult to counter. So, what's the build order? I hear you asking. So, what we're going to be doing is starting with 2 villages or 3 fishing boats, depending on your map. If you've got water, then send 3 fishing boats, otherwise just send 2 villages. When you're aging up, you're going to be aging up with the Torii Gate Wonder. Now this Wonder is going to be providing you with increased experience points for the remainder of the game as long as you've got that Wonder alive. It's also going to be providing you a military wagon when you age up, which means that you can drop down a barrack straight away. And it's also going to be providing you a samurai, a single samurai, which you can use to siege enemy positions. After you reach the second age, you're going to be sending 600 wood, followed by 300 export, and then you're going to be sending the daimyo. Once the daimyo arrives, you're going to set your shipment point, and then you're going to non-stop send military units. You're going to start by sending 5 ashi, and then 5 ashi again, and depending on how much you're trading, you may want to send 5 Yumi, or you may want to send ashi attack. You're going to hit the enemy with this timing attack by putting pressure on them early, preventing them from building up with the samurai, and then you're going to be forcing them to idle with your units because you're going to just have so many, you're going to be able to outmass your opponent, and then because you've got that many units, you're going to be able to stay in their base under their town center, and there's nothing that they can do about it. So let's get into the nitty gritty. At the start, you're not going to be making a consulate. You're just going to be gathering 250 wood and dropping down 2 shrines. You need to be getting these shrines down as quickly as possible, so even if you put them down in your base, it's not a big deal. The faster your shrines are up, the sooner they're going to be able to start gathering food, and the faster you're going to be able to age up. Time is of the essence with this strategy. All of your villagers are going to be collecting food until you put your Torii Gate Wonder down. When it comes to positioning your age up wonder, it doesn't really matter where you put it. I'm quite comfortable putting it in the front of the base, just simply because it's got so much HP, and the amount of units that I'm going to have in the early game mean that even though I'm up against an Indian player here, and if he does try and forward aggro me, I'm not going to be concerned that I'm going to lose that the same way that I'd be concerned that I would lose a Toshogu Shrine. And the reason why is because when I'm playing Toshogu Shrine, I'm going max greed, whereas when I'm playing with the Torii Gates, I'm going the complete opposite. I'm almost going all in. The crazy thing about this though is that because it's Japan, you're never all in because you've got 4 vills, and you can continue building up to that max shrine population. Once your Torii Gate Wonder goes down, you're going to put it down with a single villager, and then you're going to wait until your town center is able to queue another villager, and then you're going to transition 2 villagers onto your Torii Gate, so you've got a total of 3, and then you're going to transition every other villager onto wood except for 6 villagers. So that's 6 villagers on food, 3 villagers building the Torii Gates, and the rest of the villagers on wood. You're also going to make sure that you turn your shrines onto wood producing as well. In the early game, you're going to be looking for food treasures and XP treasures before you get your first shipments. Once you've got your first shipment, you're only caring about food treasures. Once you enter transition, you need to have your explorers in position so that they're able to build shrines on hunts. That means that you're not going to be taking treasures. And for anybody at home who's watching this and saying, well, Drongo, you didn't change your shrines over to food. How about we check the replay, mate? Welcome to another episode of Sports Center. Today's highlights, we've got Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition. Ozzy Drongo, did he click the shrine or did he use the hotkey? Let's see, slow motion. Here he goes, clicking over on the food icon, over on the right hand side, and appearing to issue a command with his keyboard. Do the judges accept it? It's a resounding 3 yeses from the judges, with each judge indeed confirming this is the definitive edition and there may be bugs included. So when it comes to preparing for the second age, what you're going to be needing to do is build shrines in the meantime. So during transition, you're not going to be putting up a market, you're not going to be putting down anything else. You're just focusing on getting up shrines. Ideally, you want to put them on your side of the map as well, because you're not really too worried about your opponent having hunts. The most important thing for you is to make sure that you are continuing to produce units, and by having this trickle, it means that you're going to be able to do that. And so once you reach 60 population, you're going to be moving all of your villagers off wood and you're going to be splitting them between coin and food. So ideally what you're going to have is 7 to 8 villagers on coin. That's going to be able to allow you to produce Ashigaru non-stop, and then all the rest of your villagers are going to be going over to food. Your shrines are going to be on food as well. It's important that you are on food with your shrines, just because it means that you're going to be delaying how long it takes you to send your 2 cherry orchards in the event that that happens. So as soon as you age up, send your samurai out forward immediately and sending in your 600 wood from your home city. You're also going to be dropping down that racks in your base. Now, you can send it forward if you want, but I think it's quite reasonable to put it down in your base, because you are going to have a daimyo that eventually comes in, and that's where you're going to be making most of your units. So once you're once you've got your 600 wood on the way, you're just focusing on coin and food. As soon as the barracks is up, begin training Ashigaru. Just put 1 in the queue. That's not a problem, because the Japanese economy is going to allow you to train all 5 of those. And so you can begin looking for extended settlers around the map. So I spot one here that's herding, and I immediately just send my samurai over there. And when you send the samurai, obviously he's going to snare just like the explorer is already snaring. And it means that you're able to secure just these early little kills. Here, I didn't actually get a kill, but I do prevent him from herding this hunt in, which increases my chance of winning the game, because it's 1 less hunt that he gets access to. So the next shipment that comes in is going to be the 300 export, okay? So with the 600 wood, we're going to drop down a consulate, and that's what our 300 export's going to go into. So we need to drop that down immediately, and then with the remaining wood, we're going to be putting them all into shrines with our explorers. So it's up to you whether you want to be shrining the enemy hunts or whether you want to be shrining your own hunts. Because I've got a forward explorer already, I think it's quite reasonable to do it, and I know that the opponent hasn't gone aggro, so I feel a little bit more comfortable putting down these shrines in the enemy's base. The primary thing that I'm looking for now in the early game is to idle the enemy. So kill villagers, idle the enemy. If I can spot any villagers that are sort of sitting out, try and pick them off. So there we almost pick off 1 villager. Here's some more villagers just sitting idle, and so just making sure that we take them out. And now we do see the first round of units that the enemy's producing, so they are going to counter us. So just making sure that we back out. We don't want to lose these units, because we're not going to be able to trade efficiently. So now that the next shipments come in, this is where we ship in our daimyo. So our daimyo is going to act as our forward shipment point, and it means that we can send our subsequent shipments to there. It's also going to mean that we can train units, so it's basically a second barracks. So the key here is that I want to avoid losing units, but because I group them all together, I've got the units down the bottom and the units in the middle, and now I've walked into the middle of the opponent's units. I should have kept going towards the edge of the map, but unfortunately that was my mistake. So losing about 4 Ashigaru there with a pretty big mistake. And so once you've got your export in, what you're going to be doing is building the shinobis. So the shinobis are the archer units that have actually got a really high siege. And I'm a little bit slow here, so it is my mistake. But what you're going to be doing is hitting a timing attack with these shinobis and with your 5 Japanese Ashigaru muskets. So with this wonder, you want to be fighting as much as possible, because when you're fighting, you're gaining XP. This wonder gives you an XP multiplier, so the more you fight, the more XP you get, the more units you get. So there we see I'm finally queuing those shinobis, and we've got the daimyo coming in behind. It's very important that with the daimyo, you put the daimyo on hold ground. So it's the formation down the bottom, the 2 little feet stuck together. I haven't put it over there yet, but I will move it later, hopefully, if I am playing correctly. There we go. I did actually move it over, so that's good. So with the daimyo, you're not actually going to be able to get it back until you reach the 4th age, as long as you age up with the daimyo wonder. So it's important that you try and keep it alive. So you're looking for a position where you can keep it behind your units. You want to avoid it being sniped. So whenever it sort of gets into this awkward spot, you've just got to move it and try and get it out of there straight away. And so continuing to try and idle the enemy and just pick units off. Our shinobis are now coming in. The mass is beginning to build, and this is really where it starts to get crazy, because our shinobis are in on the way. We've got 3 more coming in, and on top of that, we've got those 5 muskets. And so our unit numbers are really going to be just absolutely outpumping the enemy, and the enemy's not ready for it. So we've already seen that the enemy's begun building Zambaraks in anticipation of us making Nunnies, and that's not going to happen. We're not interested in making that. All we're interested in doing is trying to trade as effective as possible, because any XP that we get is just going to be gained 0.15. I think it might even be 0.16 times. I think it was buffed. So it's just going to be much faster. So our opponent is going to be, building units and losing units or killing units at 1.0. We're going to be doing it much faster than them. So the more we can do that, then the more shipments that we're going to get in, and we're just able to really snowball that. And just making sure we protect our daimyo. We don't want to fight. Now, with the Ashigaru, do not be afraid of enemy. If they've got skirmishes like this, just run up on them. Just run up. And what you're going to do is you're going to use the double click trick. So when you move your enemy or your units, you're just going to shift click onto the enemy because you're so fast, and you're just going to keep following them around. You want to get into a fight with them. They're trying to kite you, ignore it. And then hopefully you can reach a point where your opponent just says, well, this game isn't winnable, deletes their army, and that's the end of it. So it's important to remember that your daimyo does indeed have an attack boost aura, so keep your daimyo close to your units as you're pushing in. There are 3 decks that are optimal with this build order. The first one is the land deck, where you've got the 2 villages. The second one is the water deck, where you've got the 3 fishing boats. And the third one is the New England variant, which is 3 fishing boats and the 2 utter key burns. And last but not least, thank you very much to my absolutely fantastic patrons over on Patreon, Nathan Holden, Esty Pesty, and Pink Jar. Alright fellas, I hope that you guys have enjoyed the video. Come say g'day over on Twitch, or otherwise, stay tuned for more.